Hello and welcome to the webinar titled Newgen EDRMS Solution for NRAA Compliance, presented by Newgen Software. Newgen Software Technologies is a provider of business process management, enterprise content management, and customer communication management platforms with large mission-critical solutions deployed at world-leading banks, governments, BPO, IT companies, insurance firms, and healthcare organizations. I thank you all for the overwhelming response we have obtained for this webinar. I am Darpan and I shall be your host and moderator for this webinar today. Today we have with us Mr. Arpan Bansal. Arpan is the Global Head of Center of Excellence for Government Vertical at Newgen Software Limited. Arpan is responsible for high-end consulting, product roadmap, and solution delivery. His expertise includes consulting large public sector enterprises on digital transformation. At the end of the presentation, we will be having a question and answer session. We request you to type your questions in the question window of your GoToMeeting anytime during the webinar, and I shall take them up at the end of the session with our expert. With that, I hand it over to you, Arpan.
Thank you so much, Darpan. Good morning, everyone. I am Arpan Bansal, Head of the Center of Excellence for Government Business and Electronic Document Record Management and Correspondence and Record Management System, in short EDRMS and CORMS, are part of that portfolio. So as part of the Center of Excellence, we have had multiple opportunities to be a part of large-scale EDRMS and CORMS implementations in various countries. In addition to this, we also closely work with engineering and product management teams. We also take care of positioning EDRMS and CORMS CORMS into market and new customers, so that helps have a holistic view of records management space. So moving further, so talking about National Record and Archive Agency, in short as we call NRAA, and this webinar is specific for Oman government agencies. NRAA has come up with a mandate that every government agency has to implement an electronic system for managing records, both physical and electronic. They have prescribed a comprehensive guideline, EDRMS and CORMS, which I mentioned as Electronic Document Record Management System and Correspondence and Record Management Systems, which cover the complete life cycle of the record from the time it comes to the agency till the retention period is completed in the agency, including handing it over to NRAA. Today, we will cover what those guidelines, compliances are, and the software solution we provide that can help you to comply with. Newgen has kicked off this project with NRAA along with 18 ministries, and this speaks a lot on the maturity and the domain experience which Newgen carries. Going further, what actually this NRAA compliance means, and what does it mean for any public sector undertaking or the agency, government agency, right? So these requirements are described by NRAA into two parts, and under the following chapters under those two parts. The first part is the Enterprise Document Record Management System, and some of the key features are like these. The first point, capturing and declaring of records. So herein we are talking about capturing the records from multiple channels like paper, email, MS Office applications, and declaring them as records. How we declare them as record is by way of the following chapter, which is the classification scheme and file organization. By way of creating a document taxonomy specific to the agency, as well as NARA, in fact, in my say NRAA, has released a document which has a record series to codify each type of document. And each of the agency has to follow the same classification schema, right? And then there is something called access control and security. Now there are things like you need to restrict the access of documents based on, say, public access control, or a restricted access control or a confidential access control, and apply appropriate security controls on top of it. The things like, next is the hybrid record management. So there are multiple ways to look into it. One is to access the records from multiple systems or repositories, and also manage both the physical and the electronic type of records. That's very, very critical. I'll cover this in the following slides as well. But that's very, very critical, managing both of them in a same manner. Next is the retention and disposition, which is the follow-up of this. When you're managing these records, what are those management tasks? One of the most critical is retention, wherein you're applying the retention management policies on the physical and the electronic document altogether. When we say retention management, storing them in the physical documents in your active warehouse, and for electronic documents in your regular hard drives or in a tape drive as well. And then putting out those disposition rules on both sets of these documents. Like for the physical documents, if they've elapsed say 7 or 10 years time frame, they need to be shredded physically. How you get all those notifications from the system. Deleting the electronic copy of the document along with the associated metadata and the document taxonomy also. So these are those, and they need to be audited and logged in the system for future compliance purpose. Next is the search and retrieve and render. So any of the documents, be it the physical and the electronic, need to be searched from those repository, from physical document, from the regular file cabinet, etc., where exactly those are lying, right? And rendering those multiple format of the documents, whether it's PDF, the Word, the TIFF, or maybe any video or audio file, to render it in the same user interface itself, so that it need to be accessed securely. Next is the administrative function, that is providing the rights to the user in terms of whether read, modify, access rights to the groups and the roles in their organization hierarchy mapping, how you're doing that. The next point is regarding the correspondence management systems. When you say the key features in those different chapters are managing correspondence as a record, making the correspondence both inbound and outbound correspondence, whether it's physical or electronic, as I repeat that, as a record and managing it. And I'll show you how it is being done in subsequent slides. Then internal routing. There may be scenarios where for approval purpose of a particular correspondent need to be routed. And it can be both sequential, it can be ad hocly need to be routed for, for an exceptional approval, etc. How that can be incorporated in the system. Now, things like delivery to external parties, security and access control, and then search, display, and usages. Now, searching the correspondences within the repository specific to your own department, and drafting correspondence, very critical. Even though you are getting the correspondence, now there's an option to create the correspondence in a word-like text editor for internal and external parties, how that can be done. So these are the different chapters under the two sections of the NRAA compliance, which need to be adhered to fully, so that you are getting those certifications and the software as well as the physical solutions, the physical copy of the documents are complying with those record management policies. Now, what are those, typical issues or rather the challenges while the organizations face while implementing the NRAA guidelines? Now, that's very critical. Now, first of all, we'll explain what these were. Now, these are the typical challenges when we generally find them for using any software application. The first and the foremost, there are more than 300 odd unique compliances, and which require a partner to cover the breadth and the depth of the solution. Things like disposition workflow, where how you are defining how a particular electronic record is getting disposed of, and including the physical copy of the document. Next is managing of those electronic records in terms of governing the policies for those retention management, user rights management, etc. Manage the metadata, that is managing the document taxonomy, which is unique for your government agency, but also which will be important for you while you're doing a handshaking of those documents, etc. with NRAA, which is at the end of the cycle, wherein the documents are exported and the records are exported in a specific format as suggested by NRAA. And this is very important when you're talking about post the retention period has expired. Now things like retention schedule, and these are retention schedule. No, these are not static policies. Now that's the critical point. These change with the governance. These change with the internal policies, and the system should be ready and flexible enough for that change. So even though you get a package solution, right, but the solution should be flexible enough to make the changes based on the current requirements, and so that it is not a hard-coded solution which you're getting it from any of the partner. And needless to say, it does not compromise on the information security, even if the record is being accessed from any other application, right? Now, what is a successful long-term EDRMS and CORMS? We just go through the highlights here. Now, going further, what you see are the features which we have. Now, the first point, as I mentioned, correspondence management system. These are capturing and digitizing all the incoming and outgoing and inbound correspondences. And this can be captured. That is the second point, which is capturing and declaring the record. These need to be able to be captured from multiple set of sources and immediately applying the record classification schemes, which is basically subsequent highlight of the solution. This for both electronic and the physical copy of the record. Then applying the retention and the disposition policies to retain the record for long-term purpose based on the compliance for both electronic and physical documents. This also includes storage management policies, wherein the physical documents is stored in a specific cabinet, specific file folder, in a specific rack, in a specific active or an inactive warehouse, and pushing them from an inactive warehouse or an active warehouse to inactive warehouse to a external agency to store all these physical records. Then is the hybrid records management. To create, now things is, you already have a physical copy of the document, but there's no electronic copy of that. How do you identify that as and how do you map that into the system so that it works on as an electronic document? So what you do is you don't scan. Sometimes there's no possibility of scanning the document. You create a paper profile of that physical document and manage it in the same way as a physical copy will move in the system. It gives you those prompts on the system when that retention period has expired for that physical copy of document, where exactly it is kept in the warehouse, and accordingly you can pick that up and apply the appropriate disposition rules on top of it, or probably move it to the external warehouse. Next is the security and access control. Now herein we need to talking about providing various classification schemas and to manage the accessibility for those user roles and groups associated with it. Next is search, retrieve, and render. Now you're talking about locating and searching the physical copy of the document as well as the electronic copy. When I say physical copy, again I'm coming back to the same point. There might be a big warehouse the documents might be kept in, and how those structuring, catalog management is being done is through this system as well. And then for any, if there's any legal case comes up into the picture, how do you quickly retrieving those electronic copy as well? This is very important from that perspective also. And this includes the electronic copy of the mails as well. Emails are stored as a record, and they are as a proof of record they are being, produced. How you're taking care of that. So this is where the search, retrieve, and rendering is important. Next is regarding the ready for integration solution. Having a framework to integrate with the existing application of the agencies. So you might be having some of the existing, electronic application, third-party applications, which are currently running in your organizations. Now, systems should be intelligent enough to integrate with these applications. For example, pulling up the emails from the existing systems, creating them as a record, and pushing it into a records management system, right? And then not only that, don't create two copies of those same document or a record. Create a single copy of truth, so that later on there is no there's a data integrity is maintained across the systems itself. So this is where the integration framework should be available in terms of utilizing APIs, XML APIs, web services, etc. The next is regarding the administrative functions. When I was referring to giving the rights based on your organization hierarchy, defining the user groups, roles, and the users subsequently under it, and giving them rights based on that, right? So this is a typical, highlights of the solution which should be having in a solution here. And this is where I'm coming back to the the point where as an organization, as Newgen has developed this kind of a solution on top of it, having these different kind of these benefits which comes alongside with it. So things like completely 100% compliance to NRAA guidelines. We be able to manage the physical and electronic effectively and to reduce the overall physical storage, and physical storage from the physical storage from perspective physical copy documents, as well as the IT storage cost of having those regular SAN and S drives which are there in your organizations, and to retrieve to reduce those storage size areas within the system, how it can effectively compress the size of the documents to some level so that the overall size of the IT storage can be reduced. And as users should be able to search, retrieve, and access the record faster pertaining to their specific usage, and it automatically leads to increase in productivity and fewer human errors, leading to improved decision making. And all these things leads to a smart e-governance solution wherein the internal operations and the policies, the departments can work seamlessly and responding to requests in a very fast manner. When we're talking about all this, I just need to touch base that how, as an organization, Newgen has come up with this very effective solution here. And herein I'm going to talk about a little bit on Newgen first, and then I'll just show you how the solution has been developed in Newgen and how this is being used as a package solution with the power of flexibility on top of it, using the framework which we have. Just before going ahead and explaining the Newgen in implementing the NRAA compliant solution, this is just a quick brief of Newgen. So we have about you can say 450 plus active installation across 60 countries, and almost 2,300 employee base here, with around 300 channel partners. Since I'm talking about the EDRMS and CORMS today, I'm highlighting that we are rated as leader in the ECM wave and the BPM digital process automation wave report of Forrester, and we are the only vendor to feature in the Gartner's Magic Quadrant for ECM, BPM, CCM, and case management. So this gives a lot of credibility of the solution. It gives a lot of credibility of the maturity of the solution which we have developed. And as we say, we are almost a 25-year-old organization, so we have the requisite domain, and we have seen the ECM, the record management industry, grow across the globe, and we bring those best of the best breed solutions to the regions. And that is where we are talking about the framework of the solution based on which the EDRMS and CORMS solution is built on. Now, the first component is the right from the content capture to processing of the record to reporting to outbound communication, Newgen stack, and these are the building blocks framework on which EDRMS and CORMS solution is built on. On the left side, you're talking about the scanning engine, which is the OmniScan, wherein the incoming records are getting ingested from the physical documents are getting automatically scanned, document separation happens, and pushing it into the underlying repository, which is the OmniDocs, which is the DMS. And then while they are pushing it across into the DMS repository, it goes through some sort of a workflow or a correspondence management workflow internally, wherein first of all the process designing happens of between multiple stakeholders, how it should work on. And once the designing happens, the execution frameworks happens based on the business rules which you will configure based on, say, an ad hoc routing needs to be done based on certain exceptions. or any approval needs to be done internally on a fast track, how that needs to be done utilizing the IBPS framework. And this comes with an online dashboard where you can capture and see on a every daily basis what is the status of the correspondence, in which person's queue it is lying in, and if it is a exception case, how much time it should take, any kind of put to me on an email alert basis. This comes up as a part of the package solution. Next is regarding the customer communication, wherein the outbound correspondences or the outbound information can be sent in a bulk format. And the last part, which is the most important, is the archival, wherein you define the record management policies for your organization. You define the disposition management policies. To the physical tracking of the document, where it is going from one active warehouse to inactive warehouse to a rack space, etc. That gets completely in a graphical way you can see and track it. Going further, this is the point which I want to talk about, how the EDRMS solution in general work on. Now, before I make a point, let me deal with something very simple first. And I get this question really asked a lot of times: how is RMS different from a document management system, right? And I tell them these are the two fundamentally different systems, but works as complementary to each other, right? Now, while the goal of document management system is productivity, the goal of record management system is compliance. And document management system has to deal with the content, while the record management system has to deal with the history, revisions, retention and disposition policies, taxonomy, cycle of content. What we see is that most of the time, the organizations take complete focus on their current pain points. And this is important, but at the same time, which is also important, is to keep a bigger picture in mind, which involves rolling out to the department, scaling up, and future needs. So to bring a strong foundation, gets a lot of emphasis on the what should be given the completeness of the blueprint. And the golden rule of thinking big, but executing small steps should be followed. Now, just talk about here, we are talking about the capturing of those different records from multiple sources here on the left side, and then through the workflow management, record management process, you are trying to send it through different users, etc. And within the record management, you declare a record, do a disposition and hold, do a vault manage on the physical documents, and apply the retention policies. Once everything has been done, at that point of time, then it is being sent for those disposition workflows internally, etc. And to ensure that these things are right on track, there needs to be certain certification guidelines, etc. need to be taken care of, like DoD 5015.2, and which is the most comprehensive and dependable in the market right now, which actually helps you de-risk your implementation by providing comprehensive and compliant features, right? Now going further, we'll talk about a simple correspondence management, the workflow here, which is according to the NRAA guidelines, right? Now, this is how it is broken. That's how it is done. So correspondence comes to the the user's desk there, and it is then on this unfiled correspondence is sent to the respective officials. So the officials then at this point of time, they are reviewing these correspondence and perform necessary action in terms of editing, modifying, etc. There might be scenarios where they are being sent across as they might be sending this into a fixed or an ad hoc routing list, sending different set of users, right? The solution should be flexible enough to take care of that. And once that is being done, right, it is then sent to an approving authority internally, right? And once that approval has been done, then it is being searched in which particular file this particular correspondence need to be filed in. Now, searching for that file folder, both physical and electronic, in the system is while you have done the complete mapping, is pretty much matter of seconds. You can do a searching on top of it, And then once you select it, in which file that correspondence should be filed in, you file that in and push it into a long-term archival and storage purpose here. Now, how it is done and broken down and worked upon on each stages, now I'll be explaining it to you, just going further. Now, this is the first screenlet which I need to just talk about. This is this is the scanning interface wherein the documents are scanned in the bulk format, and on the left side is the indexing which needs done for those physical documents. And this can be completely automated. Only a selected field need to be selected there, so that the scanning user does not do any additional work, which reduces the well, coming back to my point of reducing human errors and extracting information from the correspondence, filing it up at the initial stage, and then sending it for approval purpose. So this is where the physical copy of the document are getting digitized at the very first stage here itself, and here in the document identification happens at the stage itself. Another way of pushing it is through a web interface or a web portal through which somebody can log in, and we already have minutes of the meeting as a record. You want to put it as a long-term archival or a correspondence letter in any inbound or outbound, which needs to be archived for a long-term purpose. Herein you can just simply register the correspondence, pick it up from your laptop or your desktop, and then pull it up. Some of the metadata or the document taxonomy which you will define will be pulled up here for this correspondence, and that can be filled up here on this particular screen. And then it's an option to based on the rights management, whether the information captured here is editable, not editable, etc., can be taken care of. Once this has happened, the correspondence initiation has happened. So now you have captured the correspondence or the record, and now it is being initiated into the system for approval purpose. It can be a situation where it is a sequential flow. In terms here you can see currently going from assistant manager to manager and record officer, defining the priority low, medium, high, right? In addition to it, there is an option also in the drop down to make it an ad hoc route also, wherein you can select instead of assistant manager, I just need to send it to a record officer from here. I just need to search for the name, and automatically we route it to that specific approver for them to approve. So all those and you can have the subsequent ad hoc route from record officer say to a manager, etc. You can do that. So this kind of ad hoc routing, the flexibility is also provided on the user front. And herein she can look at the correspondence, and in the background you can see it is already there for them to view any of those documents as records, to make those notes at the bottom frame, for them to put some remarks as well, which gets edited, which gets audited as a date and time stamp, so that future on you want to check up who had given an approval, what was their comments before making that decision, can be provided here. And this can be completely secured, digitally timestamped. They can have the digital signatures also can be embedded into this particular screen. And once this is being completed, done, etc., it goes into say a complete the correspondence stage, and wherein you are filing it into the relevant file folder which has been identified for this correspondence. And we'll see how that's being done at the back end, so that the front end user does not need to do any kind of editing on top of it, even though this option can be provided to make those changes on filing. Sorry, I think there was slight echo. I think there are some questions here which we can take up later during the session, right? Not a problem. Let us just continue as we are speaking, and we'll take up those queries. You can just type it out in the chat box, and we'll take it up subsequently from there. Right. Going further is the online drafting of any correspondence which needs to be done. Right. So look at the correspondence which is there in terms of, say, this is the solution should be having online editor to make those correspondences internally within this application. And this is here we come up with an online office editor, which in which you can make those correspondences, office memos, notes, etc. can be created. And this can then, once it is being created, saved, it can be sent for an approval, and thereafter it gets saved as a correspondence or as a record going further, something similar what we had seen earlier. So this is an additional component rather than going out of the application and then saving it in your hard drive, then importing it back. Now you can do everything in the single system itself, and you can create those templatized versions of those correspondences or the office notes, so that most of the information is in a formatted way and can be picked up, and this saves the time for the departmental users there. The next is the important component of the disposition authority, which is definition in the EDRMS, and we're talking about those disposition policies. First of all, initially has to be defined what are the classification schemas. So within the classification, what is the classification schema? Classification schema entails how the records are classified with regards to their user rights management, retention disposition management policies, as well as the storage management policies associated with it, and what can be ingested in that document. So there's a file plan at the left side which you see, in which you can create those nth level of file plan can be created. Say for example, at the top department, the organizational level, organization, there's a department, a sub-department, and then basis on that, the file plan is created for that particular type of documents or records. All this can be done in a tree-like structure, which can be at nth level. You can see that as a sample example, and in that particular file plan, you'll have list of documents on the right side of the pane, and basis which you can pick it up, click it up, and view them as and when required. And this basically is mapping of a electronic or a physical box into an electronic format is also being done. You can create those bottom part you see as a paper profile can also be created rather than, even if the document or record does not have a physical electronic copy, a paper profile can be created and then can be used up from there. And then this is regards to the metadata management, as I was referring it to. These are the different document taxonomies which can be pre-created, pre-packaged within the application as we are talking. And then you can also, as a government agency, can also have its own set of metadata indexing parameters for data search and retrieval can be created, and the users can then make all those annotations in terms of highlighting certain sections, de-highlighting certain sections, and also in terms of putting their own digital signatures on top of it can also be done utilizing the same framework. Next is the retention management policy. I was referring it to from time and again during the start of my conversation. Herein, when you can create different kind of retention rules for different department and for different kind of records can be done. And when you say retention rule, it shows that there is an option to define what is, say for example, the condition is from the current date to a file has been closed, say for example, almost an year, right? So you're defining that for almost an year the file has not been used, right? Then you can define the policies for the physical document in terms of shredding it or burning it, and for the electronic documents which are there in part of those file folder, they need to be pushed into either a tape drive, and then whether those the asset metadata also need to be deleted or not. If you don't want to delete that, you can still keep it for compliance and audit purpose. This flexibility comes along with this solution. Very, very important. And you can have those multiple such retention rules created within the agency, within one single agencies, for different file parts as well. And this is here, applying that. So as I was explaining, this was the file plan which we had created initially, and where the content tab had the different records, and the general tab which we currently see showcases the first part in the bottom, which is mentioned, the retention rule which we had created is mentioned there. You can change that. Also, regards to the location where currently it is, it does the mapping of that particular box, where exactly it is getting stored, who's the owner, who is the disposition authority, what is the cutoff, rollover rate, and storage rules. Now, this is also important. So, see, for example, you have identified that each file will have around 100 such records, right? And as soon as the 101st record come, you create a new file folder accordingly in the physical rack space as well. So you can map that similarly into the system, that after every 100 record, a new file folder will be created in the electronic system as well, how it is getting mapped. So this gives a complete mapping for you for the physical as well as electronic copy of the document. Now, next was regarding disposition queue. This is again very, very unique for NRAA, how they have identified of creating disposition workflows, and there can be multiple disposition workflows. So, for example, you're talking about those queues need to be created as soon as the number of records from multiple such files need to be destroyed or pushed into the inactive warehouse. So these will come as a destruction processing queue in your system, automatically pulling up those records and files, and then it is up to the record manager to perform the action on top of it based on the criticality of the record in the system itself, past their retention expiration period. And this is their destruction queue. You can simply see that, and once you see, you can finalize the records for those disposition here from this particular stage itself. You can do a selection and then do the destruction, and based on the policies you have defined, it will automatically delete the document or the metadata or the physical document. It will give you those prompts till you have shredded or deleted the documents there. Next is regarding the security and the access control. Herein we are talking about functional level security. Till what? So we provide, the solution provides the nth level of security from the top to bottom. I said top in terms of the overall repository level. Then at the file, the departmental level, the file and cabinet level, and the document and the record level itself, you have got different level of security, and each of those have come up in terms of these different functionals within those at the file level are configured as a security parameter, and you can select, deselect them as part of the user or a group level functional, or their rights can be defined. So as a record manager, I've got rights to everything, right? You can see. Now going further, my the assistant manager or a manager level folk who are working in the different department may not have all those features or the access rights. You can just simply do a deselect of that, and this can be managed in this user rights management. Needless to say, the solution, as I'm talking about the integration framework, the solution is easily integratable with your LDAP or the Microsoft Active Directory. You can do those mapping there as well, and basis which the rights management can be configured. So this is what I was referring to, those functional level security. You can pull up the user, and the user groups from your Active Directory can be pulled up, and herein you can define those rights, and the single sign-on feature can be provided within the application. Right. Now we're talking about the physical record management space. Very important again. So herein I was referring it to that the storage management feature is as critical as the electronic storage management feature. Now herein what we configure, you need to configure rather as different warehouses, active and inactive warehouses. You need to create that as boxes, and based on your current policies of how many records need to be there as part of one single box or in the entire warehouse, that policy needs to be just mapped here. Once the mapping happens, there is only the system gives you regular prompts as and when the storage rule is getting executed. Say for example, after every 1 year, from the time the correspondence or the record is being filed in the active warehouse. Say for example, active warehouse, say for example, within your back of your desk, they have just kept it. After every year, this needs to be pushed across to the inactive warehouse. So this needs to be configured, so it somebody else is also there. In turn, if you are on leave, system will be giving those prompts to those group of users that, hey, this particular set of documents or the record need to be pushed back as well. Now this is where those physical records management, so it maps the not only those file level, the boxes as well in the system. So when I was referring to the file plan, the content which you have stored electronically, the corresponding physical copy of that document, where exactly it is kept, that is getting mapped in this particular section. In terms, you can select which box that particular record is being kept, in which particular warehouse, etc. So this mapping happens from here itself. So on later you want to do search and retrieval, it gives those immediate answers back to you. And herein you do those space management feature. When you say a space management feature, so in the warehouse itself, there might be scenarios on an ongoing, on a daily basis. Some of the records are getting deleted, some of them are getting added, etc. So am I able to manage in terms of where exactly I have got a space management or a warehouse where the boxes are probably vacant, where I can push those records, etc. So this gives a graphical view of, to me, that say for example in the warehouse, which exactly rack I am referring it to, in which particular shelf, which is the box which is empty for me, for where I can add more records going further, and what is the amount of the units or the number of records which are currently empty, which I can add more. So this gives a very good graphical representation of the complete space management functionality there. In addition to it, so this is where, in addition to it, you can also automatically generate barcodes for the boxes. So for example, I can define the location rack box, and this is a particular color. It will automatically generate this barcode. I can simply take a print, take out on a stick note, and stick it onto my box there. Later on, when I'm trying to retrieve, I just need to do a barcode scanning, and it gives a pop-up where exactly the documents records are. Now all this is built up on top of a business process management framework as well, wherein we are talking about the rules, we are talking about the routing mechanism, sequential, ad hoc, etc., and integration mechanisms. So this is, I'll touch base here as well, how this is a important cog in the wheel while we are talking the entire EDRMS and CORMS system. So herein there is the business process management where the entire designing of the process takes place. You can define, it's a completely drag and drop tool. Different swim lanes can be identified. Say for example, at the data entry level or probably at a departmental level, you can configure those different flows, and based on the decision management or the decision rules which you have, they can be routed back to the record manager, or it can be sent it to an approver for their approval, and it can go to nth level of cycle. Also, the framework provides the integration mechanism inbuilt within it, so you can integrate with your existing ERP or backend applications also. Solution gives you a complete configuration in terms of user screens. Here you can see 4 tabs in terms of I can see my queues, my cases assigned to me, and my current calendar in terms of where I'm busy, I'm not busy, etc. can be configured. Herein I can have multiple configuration. I can have just 2 tabs onto it. So based on the requirements, you can have a dashboard also popped up, and I'll show in the subsequent screen how configurable it is to create those different user screens as well, right? Now these are different administrative features. You can create the versions of the document. You can create new profiles of the users, wherein those rights can be assigned to those profiles of those users, which we had just elucidated earlier. So multiple profiles of the users can also be created apart from the user groups and roles, and each of those user profile will have different set of unique accessibility, as well as security rights management. The bottom frame talks about the different versions of the processes. So going down the path, after 1 year, you are changing the process altogether of routing, rerouting, etc. And you want to go back again to the previous version, probably 2 years down the line. You can see, cross-check, and do a kind of a simulation of an exercise as well in this application. Going further, I'll just talk about, say, this solution is completely Unicode based and can be deployed in a complete, in different languages. Herein, we are talking about the Arabic language. It is completely deployed, currently being used in the organization. This is a different user interface I was referring it to, wherein once a user logs in, he gets the list of the cases where it is lying in different queues, probably as in a pending state, etc. Which your user in the department is doing, what is the load of that particular user there, and then the list of cases assigned to him. Something similar what we saw in the previous screens of define the document taxonomy within the application can be configured in the Arabic language as well. So yeah, so just going further. So this is all in terms of the the overall solutioning of the system comes into the picture, and that is where the Newgen as an organization is kind of uniquely placed to help partners in Oman going ahead implementing the NRAA guidelines here. And why it is as a solution is very, very unique. It's primarily from the first point, it's a strong enterprise content management and business process management backbone. You can see you do need a solution which is readily packaged and can be delivered to you and start working on top of it from the day one. That's what you require. That's already there. But also there should be a flexibility to to make all those configuration level changes for you as well. Right? That's part of the solution. Next is regards to the comprehensive record lifecycle management. We saw and we saw that how we are able to manage all kind of different kind of records, both physical and electronic, and emails, photographs, audio, video, everything is is part of this content management repository, and it can be managed effectively as a record. Next is regards to domain offering. As I mentioned, we are a 25+ year all organization, and we have done multiple government implementation, PSU implementations across the globe and in Middle East and in Oman, as we are talking about. So this gives a lot of maturity of the solution comes into picture of in delivering it and executing it with our partners. Next is when we say about the 100% compliance NRAA regulations, and you have seen that we are currently as a solution is meeting the regulatory requirements and managing the mission critical records and this organization as well. And next is regards to the physical document movement tracking. So whenever you're talking about from one department to another department, or to transferring these records to NRAA, this is being done. This can be done utilizing this framework itself. The user interface is completely is very easy to manage. You've seen they are not very big menu items there. There's a lot of white space management has been done, keeping in mind how the mouse clicks, the minimum mouse clicks needs to be done so that the task is getting completed at a very fast rate, both from the filing correspondence as well as approving to the time of searching and retrieving those particular correspondence or those records. And last, which is the most important, is in terms of security. As I mentioned, the solution is already in process, is certified by US Department of Defense 5015.2, which is a gold standard security globally. And this is being implemented in US and other geographies as well. And now we're talking about in Oman, wherein the security is paramount, and we have the requisite certification to validate us as a solution, which is important. So in all, this gives a kind of the solution a complete umbrella of the features which are important from a compliance perspective, as well as from the usability perspective, and also from the perspective of having a effective electronic solution in place which caters to your day-to-day activity needs and follows a policy of smart e-governance in the organization. With this, I will break, and I'll give my controls to Darpan here to take the session from here on.
Thank you, Arpan, for your valuable insight and for walking us through the Newgen EDRMS solution for NRAA compliance. Thank you to the entire audience for your valuable time. We shall be sending across the presentation after a short while. Goodbye and have a great day ahead. Thank you.